Screen addiction is taking its toll on children. Okay, that is the title of a piece recently published in the New York Times, coinciding with the release of a PBS documentary. By the time you see this, it will probably already be out. The name of the documentary is called Web Junkie, and it is a documentary piece highlighting how basically spending time in front of the screens all day is affecting children. It really highlights the stories of some children who are basically hooked on video games. They play for dozens of hours at a time. They don't eat, they don't sleep, they don't go to the bathroom, and all in all, it's a bad time. Now, I've previously talked about this on the show and talked about a different piece that I saw that kind of highlighted, and this is available on YouTube. I'll see if I can't dig up the link. It's a piece that highlighted how China is treating internet and video game addiction. And some of the stuff that they showed really seemed archaic, didn't really seem to make sense to me. It basically involved like hooking children up to this brain scanning machine and then showing them like rapid fire images of video games being played, and over time, like once they stopped seeing their brain waves spike in relation to these images, that's when the treatment was successful and that's when they were cured. I don't know, kind of reminded me of like the Clockwork Orange scene where he's got his eyes pried open and is having to watch all these screens with the violence and all kinds of stuff. It didn't really make sense to me. But that is just one little piece in part of a bigger problem. And what I'm talking about is something that's going to become a bigger issue over the next couple of decades, especially as my generation starts to have kids and we think about how we're going to raise our kids. And what we're talking about is what it means for childhood development when we've got a screen in front of their face all day, right? And we don't really have any hard answers at this point. I mean, the field and research is very limited. I mean, I was probably the first generation that really grew up with a lot of screens, and it still wasn't really that bad. I got a cell phone when I was maybe in 6th or 7th grade, but it wasn't a smartphone, it's just a regular phone, and kind of grew up with the technology, right? So we're kind of just seeing now what the impacts are. But some of the statistics really are startling now. So check this out. The average 8 to 10-year-old spends nearly 8 hours a day with a variety of different media. Older children and teenagers spend more than 11 hours per day. It's talking about smartphones, laptops, computers, TV, video games, all that stuff. So a very large portion of the waking hours, right? Okay. So television, along a popular babysitter, is still the dominant medium, but computers, tablets, and cell phones are gradually taking over. Now, one of the most important things to note, if you're raising an infant, the consensus all around the board is that if you've got a child under the ages of 2, it should not be really exposed to any screens at all. Okay, these are very, very crucial times in childhood development. I'm sure it's hard to do, and no one does it perfectly. But they say, this is not the time to be exposing your children to screens, and you can ramp it up slowly over time, right? So Harvard-affiliated psychologist who's been studying this, she's quoted as saying, "We're throwing screens at children all day long, giving them distractions rather than teaching them how to self-soothe, to calm themselves down." And texting also remains a very big problem as well. Interesting statistics on this. So half of teenagers are sending 50 or more text messages per day, and those 13 to 17 are averaging 3,364 per month. Another study was showing that on average, teenagers are sending at least 34 text messages once they're in bed with the lights out. So texting, another thing that we have to think of. Now listen, I don't have any solutions here, but I think these are things that we need to talk about before they become epidemics, right? I mean, one of my big things, I talk about this on the show all the time, right? Let's talk about stuff before it becomes a crisis, right? We spend so much time and money mitigating crises all around the world, when if we had just had a little foresight and started having conversations when it looked like it might be a problem, we might not run into it. So this is my introduction on this. I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to watch the documentary. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. How do you raise your kids? Do you think it's not a problem at all? I don't know. I don't have the answers. But don't forget to subscribe.